and this is a Sunday edition, it's a special edition because this month is Asia Pacific Heritage Month in America. And because of that very reason, and no other better reason, that I want to make sure that we put some spotlight on the Asian community that I have worked with for many, many years. And today, a conversation and talk is going to be with my great friend and colleague, and often my boss, Editor-in-Chief of Harper's Bazaar Singapore, Kenneth Goh. How are you, Kenneth?
Hi, I'm good. I'm really well. It's a bit of a rainy morning in Singapore, but it's the start of the monsoon season. So, but we're good. We are very happy here. Cozy
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we get to connect. And as you know, for those of you guys that follow both of us on Instagram, that we have worked together for many, many years. And what we're going to do today is actually just touch a little bit on that. But I really want everyone who doesn't know you as much as I know you, and let them know what editor-in-chief really means for Harper's Bazaar. And for many, many years, you have worked in the fashion industry for how many? 12 years?
Oh, yeah, about that. I started when I was 12.
Well, walk us through a little bit. What is it like? Because I, from what I can recall, you've been editor-in-chief for about 6 years, correct?
I've been editor-in-chief for 6 years. I've been at Harper's Bazaar for 17 years. So it's been a long journey for me at Bazaar. And it's been incredible. Like every year it changes, every time it changes. And I remember I started working with you when I was the creative director. So we've had a long journey together, Yu Tsai.
And what's the difference between creative director transitioning into editor-in-chief? What has that role changed? And what is responsibility of that role changed?
I think I came into the editor-in-chief role when sort of social media and digital was playing a much bigger role in our lives in the media, and the power of social, the power of digital really took off then. So that really was the transition and that transformation that I did, which was to really ramp up our social media and our digital. And it made us realize that we're no longer just a Singapore title. We represent the region, we represent Asia, and in a way, we are a voice pad into this part of the world. And, you know, the projects that we've worked on, Yu Tsai, have been incredible because it's that East-West connection, but you've always somehow brought in that Asian connection to us, and you've made it stronger, you've made it global, and we've been in this journey very much together. I mean, you've been my photographer of choice, my friend for life in this journey, and it's been so special. And it's all about empowering Asians and giving Asians a platform to talk and to be seen.
And it's interesting, I think, for those of you guys who are not familiar with Harper's Bazaar Singapore, it is in English, and that's something that I want to say so people know, because it is a bilingual country. And the writing in the magazine is in English. And for many, many years before I started shooting for Harper's Bazaar Singapore, there's a misnomer that models would just go to Singapore to shoot with any Singapore magazine because the writing will be English, so it looks like they actually work in the American market. And because of that reason, it became a testing ground for a lot of young models. And many models become top models because of the designation that they have hit in Singapore. And Kenneth, let's talk about that a little bit. You see many top models come through your studios in Singapore.
I mean, we've done some wonderful shoots together. I mean, we started shooting Aaron Watson and we shoot Ji-Hae together. I think that was the very first Asian cover we did, exactly there on your wall. And you know, the techniques, the spirit, the energy that we took. I think we've had the pleasure of working together very closely with you in Los Angeles, and I've always felt that it's important in the magazine pages to take my readers onto a journey, into a journey of fantasy, into a journey of dreams. And you're so good at translating that journey into something that's fantastical, that's beautiful, that's celebrating fashion in every way. Yeah, I think that's something that we've kind of created our own discourse, our own narrative. And we've worked together now for like 7 or 8 years, Yu Tsai. So we've really built on that narrative, and we've really built on the portfolio of models, of celebrities. I mean, there on your shoulder is wonderful Chrissy Teigen. that, you know, one of your wonderful contacts you brought, and Suju, we love you, Suju. And these are, you know, wonderful personalities, models, and they have a very, very powerful social media platform as well. And I think that's combined, you know, Bazaar, Yu Tsai, the models' own social media platforms, that has given so much power to Asian women. And I think that's, you know, what Harper's Bazaar Singapore represents. It's for Asian women. It's for women here in this part of the world to see themselves represented on the pages of the magazine and on the cover.
Well, the magazine is definitely an international magazine because Singapore is a destination for international travel, international shopping. I've been there. I lived there. I work out of there. I know how important and how many people come in and out of there and shop there because it really is it's a true destination for whether it's ready to wear or high-end or runway clothes or couture. It really does travel to that what we call little red dot, right? And from being in that position as editor-in-chief of the little red dot, how do you make sure that it doesn't stay known as a little red dot, becomes a big red dot and be international and the scope of all this competitive fashion field, publication field?
I think really when I came on board as the editor-in-chief, I really wanted to create new narratives. So I think I gave a lot of models the platform to talk about themselves. We gave them cover stories. We profiled them. We asked about how they started their journey, how they came about being a model, and how it was for them for life, going abroad, doing castings. You know, that whole energy, that whole platform has changed so much. And I think we've seen that change together. And models are now engaged and employed because of their social media following. And of course, in Asia, you know, in Singapore, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in all the places that we've seen models come out, and especially Korea. We featured a lot of Korean models. Somehow there's a magic in Seoul where they drink the water or eat something amazing. They come out looking so beautiful. We've had a lot of Korean models on our cover, and there's a special power that Asian models bring to a picture. Maybe it's because we've had to struggle harder to be recognized, to be seen on the global platform. So I find that models, even from China, I love working with models from China. They have sort of a steely reserve that they bring onto the set. They're very resourceful, and they will always give their 100%. And that's all you can ask for. You can only ask a girl to give 100% on set.
Well, as there are more titles for Bazaar internationally than any other syndicated magazines, and I have shot numerous of them, and being in that franchise, I know the definition and understanding what Harper Bazaar means and what a reader wants. But what's very interesting is when we begin to work together, you really put your footprint, what you wanted the Asia edition, Singapore edition to speak of. Will you share that with us?
I think what I want the Singapore edition of Harper's Bazaar to say is we are kind of like a look into the world of Asia. Like a lot of people stop over in Singapore, our world famous Changi Airport. In the days when we could travel, okay? In the days that we could travel, a lot of people stopped by Singapore and they wanted to see what Singapore was all about. And we are very, very successful, a very small country. We're very wired, we're very connected. And because our publication is one of the very few bazaars that are in English, we immediately, our pages look international. Immediately, the girls know that the clothes that they're wearing, the fashion that they're wearing, the hair and makeup, the styling, the point of view is international. The fact that they're Asian is because I think it's important as an editor to represent who and what the women are on the streets. And that's really the power of Bazaar, that we don't just feature Singaporean girls, we feature girls from all across Asia. And you help us in that process to actually edit and to bring to our pages and to our social media and our digital women, Asian women of all descents, of all countries, of all nationalities, come into our pages. And that's the power of Bazaar Singapore.
Mm. But and the journey wasn't as easy as just dialing an agency and ask for Asian models. There are several different reasons that for you guys, I want you guys to share with you is that when you cast for Asian models, it's actually quite hard in a Western market because not a lot of agencies have them. Maybe each agency have 2 or 3 of them. And this is a conversation we'll extend to next week that Nomad, we work with a lot, that have embraced the Asian faces and Asian model, both men and women. And Coco Rocha actually started the company, and we're going to be talking to her. Why was it so important for her to open that gateway for the Asian models? Now, when we're doing a casting for Asian model, it's a bit different than casting a Western face, because Western face kind of melts into Western face, period. When we start casting for Asian models, I find that we had to be more in the way of sensitivity of, is Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, Vietnamese, Thailand, whatever region they're from, Cambodia, whatever they are, what story are they telling is more important. It doesn't get, I hate to use the word, but whitewashed. It can never get whitewashed. Because then I feel that's even more important and more difficult to cast for Harper Singapore.
So I think that what has happened with social media especially is that this is something that we worked on very closely together, Yu Tsai, which was to give the discourse on social is almost slightly different to the discourse that we have in print. So on social media, what we decided to do some time ago, and a few years ago, is to give these models a digital cover. And these digital covers are really, really important because they tell the story sometimes from the point of view of what the model wants to say. Now, I could do an issue on youth, or do an issue on food, or do an issue on fantasy. But when we do a digital cover, that model has a platform with the Bazaar audience, with the global Bazaar audience, to talk about her journey, to talk about how she reached there, how she got into models.com, into the top 50. And I think it's about these channels that we can give them, the celebration of what a masthead like Bazaar, with over 100 years of DNA behind us, what we can give a model. It's truly powerful. And I think it's always about relationships that we can build, and building them stronger and stronger and stronger. And even, what we're doing today on IG Live, Asian editor and a creative director like yourself, and Asian models and Asian celebrities, platforms like this just give us a voice. And it's so, so important because there's so much misunderstanding, especially in America, about what Asians are and what Asians have done or not done.
Well, that's very prevalent right now because of the pandemic that we're in, and the sensitivity could not be more poignant and important right now that this month is Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and such a right timing to have that celebration, and also educating the Western culture that what we're in control of, and we're not in control of the pandemic, and we're not in control of the COVID, right? And but there is a cultural discourse, because the moment this pandemic had happened, I started wearing masks immediately, because culturally that's what we do, and we wear masks in Asia because we're protecting others. That's why we're wearing the mask rather than protecting ourselves, and that is still a very difficult conversation for the culture, the Western culture, to understand. And they think wearing masks is they're sick. It's a representation that they're ill. And it's actually opposite of it. When I wear that mask, is because I'm making sure that you don't get sick. And because being Asian, wearing a mask, and I can tell you, for the very first time, I felt like I just moved into this country all over again. I felt like that kid who lived in Terre Hill, Indiana, being only Asian community, and going to school and open my rice box and eating a Honan chicken, which, by the way, everybody wants me to make for them now these days, that the white people were looking at it, think I'm eating raw meat, right? And that same look, the disgust, energy was thrown again just few weeks ago, and that I absolutely ashamed and speechless for the community, not understanding that the responsibility is not based on our color of our skin. Responsibility is based on our behavior, you know? And you're right. And so ever important to have this conversation now, because not only do we need to put a spotlight on the Asian community and what good we do, but also help and educate the people who don't understand our community, right?
It's so true. I mean, Yu Tsai, when I went to Paris in end February, when I went to Paris for Paris Fashion Week, it was really the very, very start of COVID.
Yes.
And people were getting ill, and people were talking about it, and people had the misinformation that it was only China-centric. And of course, when I was in Paris, they can't tell the difference of whether you're from China or Taiwan or Hong Kong or LA or Singapore. And, you know, in Singapore, people were already wearing masks, and I wanted to wear a mask on the street. And I was advised by the Parisians, by my friends in Paris, don't wear a mask, Ken. You'll be attacked.
That's
you
right.
Know, you will be framed. Already being in the fashion community, you know, we're very privileged because we go to special places and events that are very, very, very exclusive. But even then, I was told, don't wear a mask because of that misconception that you are ill. Right. And people don't want to touch you. But then the COVID spread so quickly that towards the end of Paris Fashion Week, they were giving out masks at shows. Before you came in, they were delivering them to everyone. Everyone started to wear masks. People realized the power that came from masks. But then the one thing that we couldn't do, and that's something we should talk about, in fashion shows, you can't social distance. Mm-hmm. You can't sit 1 meter away from someone else when those seats are so prized. They squeeze us all in. And you've been at fashion shows with me. You've done shows with Bazaar, with Moschino, remember, in LA. And you know what it's like at fashion shows. It's a scrum. So for us having to go through this new world that we're going to emerge when we emerge, where I don't even know how fashion shows are going to exist the way that it existed just a month ago at Paris Fashion Week.
Because there's a bit of exclusivity for the elite in the business, the people who have earned their place in the business. Not everybody in the industry gets invited. Not even every editor-in-chief gets invited to Chanel show, Louis Vuitton show, or whatnot, or Dior. It's so I feel like everybody's all in the same place all of a sudden, right? We all no longer get to be the privileged one, and we no longer can be the only one that's on the front row anymore. I have to say, honestly, from a perspective of a photographer, from a perspective of someone who is not so elite in the fashion sensitivity person, other than loving shooting fashion, I don't really wear them. I don't have a problem with the fact that now we're all starting at the same starting block. I actually embrace the fact that we all get the front row now. Anna Wintour doesn't get the first row any longer because we're all sitting in our same couch at home. We're all at Zoom, and we all get this much real estate on a computer. And something about that brings all of us together. Something about that brings the elitists to, in a way, I don't want to say respect, but understand the customer. The fact when perfume companies start making sanitizers, when fabric, the most elite fabric company are using their fabric, making masks, that puts a smile on my face. That is the reason I love fashion. It's not being the elite, it's being able to deliver the masses. That's what I love about fashion. And I think the contrast between what Bazaar does and what you bring and what I bring, it's a lovely tug of war to find that true balance, what people want to read and see.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, recently we broke a story in the latest issue in May about whether fashion can save lives. And it really was a report talking about what fashion companies like Gucci and Burberry and Louis Vuitton and the LVMH group, the Kering group, these huge, massive fashion houses that really are what defines what fashion is all about. All of them turned their factories, like Giorgio Armani very early on, turned their factories into making masks, into making the hazmat suits, into making sanitizers. And that was really quite powerful. The global community coming together, donating lots of money in Italy, where the pandemic was really, really bad in Italy, and it still is. A lot of fashion companies in Italy, did a lot to help the community to change their factories overnight into making these masks and hazmat suits and sanitizers. And it was also really powerful. A girl that you have shot and a girl that I have shot, which is Chiara Ferragni, and how she has used her platform, her social media platform,
incredible,
to actually help the community, to help the people in Italy, to donate, to talk about it. A fashion influencer, a fashion blogger like Chiara doing what she does, that to me is the new power that celebrities, personalities, models bring to the table. And at a magazine like Bazaar, we want to celebrate them.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. At this moment in time, the true color of people really shine through. And for people who don't love fashion as much as we do, and I have friends who are my earlier life friends are all nerds, because I'm a nerd to begin with. I'm a scientist. And they always look at me like, oh, you're doing fashion now. There's a negative connotation that goes with it. So be able to say, I'm proud of this industry today, knowing that they have now dropped their ego, dropped everything about their label, but make what everybody's need, is I truly hope it's a reflection of the future for high fashion. Because that was a discourse I always personally had problem with. I love a Yohji Yamamoto, but I don't have $5,000 to pay for that Yohji Yamamoto jacket. And I'm not an influencer, they're gonna send me one for free. But the fact that if he is making masks today, is for everyone, I too will be able to own a Yohji Yamamoto and feel part of the community and feel like I'm part of something I'm proud of. I think that is the most beautiful thing that happened for me during this pandemic. How horrible. So many lives have lost and people have lost loved ones. But somewhere in there, it's this thing called commonality. We all have to find our base. And we have to choose what to do from that point forward, right? Let's Talk started in STEM for the fact that I needed to stay creative. And we had several conversations offline. You asked me, what are you going to do? You never stop. And I was desperate to need to communicate about creativity. Then what I found is that a lot of my friends didn't know how to communicate. And I'm fortunate enough, love talking, and I'm able to speak well enough that I started just to talk to them. And then this was born. And on top of that, we're using this platform inspired by so many other people that we started raising masks as well. We're raising money for masks, and we're almost at 100,000 today. So
congratulations.
So it's truly, it's the most pivotal time now to see where we're going to grow all together in a fashion, in Harper's, in our relationship as photographer and editor-in-chief, in our relationship with Wendy, who was a fashion director, creative director with a magazine that I love and dear and work with, that he get to travel and work with me, and I love those relationships. But now I feel like, okay, now we're all kind of all on this even playing field. Mm-hmm. Where do you go from here? Where do you go from here as editor-in-chief?
I think that, it's a lot of people have the misconception that as the editor, you're very hard to engage with. You're in your ivory tower. You only talk to certain people. You have to talk to my assistant of my assistant of my assistant. But actually, that world has never really existed. And certainly over the past sort of 2 to 3 years, I would say that those barriers are knocked down. That you have to be a lot more accessible to people, and you have to listen to the voices on the street. And if you look at fashion is influenced from the street. So you as the editor, you have to stay plugged into the street. You have to be able to talk to young designers who are like 20 years old, and not just the big names, because they're the ones who consumers, who followers, who readers want to read about and know about and hear their story. And it's always about a cause. Like what you have done is you've always made a cause for something, whether it's masks to produce masks, to help a community, to give a voice for Asians. And I think that everyone needs to have a cause today. Everyone needs to have something bigger and better than a $10,000 bag. You have to sell something of conviction, or something that has sustainability in this world, something that has authenticity, that goes beyond a fabric, that goes beyond an expensive bag.
Isn't that refreshing to hear that fashion industry can become that? Because of this pandemic, that fashion industry have to now look at themselves and look in the reflection of the mirror and say, how are we going to represent ourselves from this point forward? And I know some are going to be, we're only going to be couture. That's why they're going to be old school. There are old schools of thoughts of people. They're always going to be that. But for the ones that are more progressive, the one that are really listening, and the one that's paying attention to how the environment, our pollution have dropped in major cities because the responsibility that we have taken by not polluting them, that perhaps the brands would be more responsible. We saw early in Dior, they started to pay attention to that and start designing lines that's more sustainable materials and resources that does not damage and put more carbon footprint into our earth. And that, to me, I'm proud to say, I love fashion. That's when I really truly love fashion, to know that it has such a power, like Harper's. When I shoot for these covers, what I'm most proud of is that we cast the right talent with the right voice and with the right story, and has the right messaging at the right time. And that's what magazine is to me, right? That every 30-day cycle, you want to share that pivotal note, what you want to tell. And there's so many editions out there. Each editor, like you, have your own point of view, what you want to tell. And I have to say, and I love nothing more when the phone call happens, when you call me and say, Yu Tsai, next month, I want to use a local Singaporean model, and she's in New York, and you need to reach out to her now. Those are the moment I go, okay, that to me is more international. And but you know how it is in the world of fashion and magazines. Some people think if you shoot Asians in the Asian market, you become a local magazine. But why not celebrate your local heroes? And I think now more than ever, that's what we need to do.
I think that in small countries like in Singapore, we've always promoted and we've always loved a great story of a model who went abroad or a designer who went abroad and made their name, and then when they come back, they're sung as heroes in our country.
We shot the swimmer.
Yes, exactly. Joseph Schooling.
Joseph
Schooling. Yeah, exactly. And that's beautiful stories. But I think where we are in right now is to chart that journey. The goal is not necessarily everything that people want to read about. People want to read about their journey, whether or not they got their Olympic gold, whether or not they got that prized, campaign with a fashion brand. It doesn't really matter. If you feel in your gut, and you've had so many years of shooting and creative direction, and I've had so many years of editing, that when we feel in our gut that this girl, this woman is representative of a 16-year-old girl's dream, of a 25-year-old young executive's, desires, we put that person on a platform, whether it's digital, whether it's social, whether it's print, and we talk about it. And it's really, really important to continue that discourse via their social media channels as well. And that's what I want to say to models, who are listening in and or watching this IG live here, is that use your platforms not just to promote the latest lipstick or makeup or handbag, but use it to promote the voices of the people who follow you and who want to know more about the community they're in and who desire to be something better. And I think that's something that we have to always push.
And I think
that, yeah.
I agree with you 110%. Especially, we always have this pandemic is a meter, right? This is the meter. This is kind of our new starting point to understand what our human behavior should be and how we should activate ourselves in our community. And because of what you just said, I can tell you that when I reach out to the Asian models for the next week's talk, every single one of them unequivocally wrote me and said, thank you. for giving me the opportunity to share, because it's been so hard. It was hard to be an Asian model to begin with, and now to be silenced, it's so hard. So I have chills talking about it, and and when I'm on the phone with them, just talking about what you guys want to talk about, it breaks my heart. You know, I was an immigrant. I am an immigrant, not a was, but is. You know, I moved to this country when I was 12 or 13. I don't want to remember because I don't remember my age, so don't ask me. Nobody can Google and find me there. I don't remember. But what I do know is that as an immigrant, you have to work harder. And funny enough, every model who travel away from their own country to model, they are essentially immigrants, and they are working so hard. And what makes me most proud is when those immigrant models choose to go back home to do the cover for their own country. That is when I'm most proud of them, because in our own Asian competitiveness, in our own Asian shame from our own culture, a lot of times we don't celebrate ourselves enough. We dye our hair different color, we curl our hair, we do all different things to mask that who we truly are. And through this pandemic, sorry, you don't get to dye your hair. You get to see who you are for the first time, and you get to celebrate that. And that, to me, is the beauty and wonder that I come out of this crazy period of time. And me, myself included, reflection of what purpose is mine as a fashion photographer. If I'm not shooting fashion, am I pointless? What have I learned with you? What have I learned through this journey of 15 years of shooting? You know, 7 years for Harper's Bazaar, my education with Hearst publication, period. I've been shooting for Hearst for 20 years, you know, and for Harper's altogether for about 12, with you 7. This education to have learned, and how do you apply that today? And I think that's what I think the fashion business, the models, the people in influence like you, the editor-in-chief, can begin to really bring light to what people need to see.
I think that, you know, that's such a great point that you brought across. And I think that photographers that I invite to the pages of the magazine, they have to bring a certain discourse. They have to bring a certain narrative to the pages. And it's not just an aesthetic that I want them for. It is something beyond that. And I think that's how photographers engage with magazines today. They need to bring a discourse in there. They need to bring a cause. Like, all of us have a cause, and they need to share a commonality with me. They need to share a love, a distinct love for the magazine and what it represents. And I think that, you know, I've had the privilege of working with amazing photographers, and some of them I engage purely for their name. I admit right now, some of them I engage just for their name. But there are wonderful photographers like yourself, Yu Tsai, that have built a relationship with us. And, you know, they live in down under, you know, in Sydney. And I have 2 great photographers that I work with there. And they bring a certain discourse. And I brought them into Singapore, and they seen Singapore with different eyes. And they shot places in Singapore with different eyes. And they embrace and celebrate things in Singapore that Singaporeans don't see. And sometimes that's what you need to bring into Singapore, that freshness, which is someone foreign, even yourself, Yu Tsai, when we brought you to Singapore to shoot, you were like loving things that were so kind of ghetto to us. You know, like, no, take me to somewhere really ghetto.
The mundane is beautiful to me. The mundane is so beautiful to me, you know?
And I know, and that's great. You know, the eyes that you have, you know, from wherever part of the world you are, you bring them to Singapore, you shoot Singapore in a way that's completely different. And that is what I want to represent in the pages of the magazine.
But with a note that I know that when we started working together, and as a creative director by training before photography, I always ask the question, what is your point of view on what you want me to do? As a photographer, I'm pretty flexible in my particular style, lighting. I'm technical enough to deliver all different sort of looks. But one thing that I always hold true to is that I want to empower the people that I photograph. And that was something that you and I talked about when we shot Jihei, for example. I remember that moment. I just moved into a new studio, and she came on set, and we had a choice to make her a typical stereotype, beautiful Asian, and just bow to every occasion, to whatever situation it is. But you and I looked at it and goes, what do you want to say about this woman? I say power. Let's make her powerful, right? We need her to be powerful from the fingertips to her gesture, to her eye, to the glance. And that to me is when I began to say, we are now going to be friends for life. And it was on that shoe. It was literally on that shoe. We looked at each other and go, oh my gosh, you get me. And I got you. And it wasn't just I got you, I got Asia. And I wanted that so much. I was shooting for UK's Harper's. I was shooting for just every different editions of magazines. And when I'll tell you this, and true story is when I was casting for you for Harper's, Singapore, the model agents asked, why are you shooting for that edition when you're already shooting for the UK edition? Mm-hmm. And I said, have you looked at my skin color? Have you looked at me? Do you know I eat rice every day still? I'm Asian, and I will always celebrate that. But I'll say this, it took a long time for me to learn and also educate them how important to stay true, to be proud of who I am and how I was brought up. And God knows you remind me of that all the time when we work together. You always says, don't forget, we are Singapore. And you are shooting an international standing magazine representing Singapore in an international way. And that is such a refreshing way to approach a photo shoot, because what that does is I have to put my ego away. I cannot be, I'm an American photographer. No, you're gonna listen to how I shoot. And God, we know other photographers. We know hair and makeup people begin to tell us how a makeup should be, but we try to tell them that, well, that does not work in the Asian culture. And it's education. And that journey of educating and collaboration, when it hits beautifully, it's when these beautiful covers come out. I mean, this is shot in Paris, you guys. This is shot in Paris in a little tiny space. And Kenneth's brilliant idea to throw this chiffon over her entire body, wrapped her up like a cocoon that's ready to burst into a butterfly. Those things don't happen if you don't have synergy with your team, with the editor that believes in your work and allow you to show your work at the same time. So thank you.
What do you think?
I appreciate that very much. So thank you for those opportunities. Thank you for letting me paint weird color on faces of people. Thank you for letting me create art covers. I love the art covers so much. Grace Chen, who did the art cover with us, she'll be with me next week. You know, when you ask me to shoot Asian models, when I'm most excited to do, truly.
And you shoot them so well. I think, it's a way of capturing. It's a way of capturing their beauty. That's so, so important. The way you light them, the way that we talk to them, the way we engage with them, the way that you direct the hair and makeup together with me. A lot of, guys, people don't know that a lot of the shoots are done remotely. Like,
oh my gosh.
You actually switch on the FaceTime, and then I'm like directing it to
We were pre-pandemic shooting before pandemic, guys. We were way ahead of their time. Way ahead of the time. We're already doing Zoom shoots before Zoom shoot was popular right now. That is exactly what it needs to be, right? We need that connection. And the fact that I think through this time of this technology Zoom shoot thing, aesthetically may not be the most beautiful, but what I'll tell you, what I love is the connection, the eagerness to be involved. There are assignments for other magazines when they give me an assignment, I turn it in, I never speak to the editor-in-chief. I talk to the producer and I say, like, happy with the picture? Is it a retouch? Great. Meet the deadline, you're gone. But now, we're all eager to connect. We cannot socially be close right now, so we find ways. And because of that, I believe editor-in-chiefs will be more involved. I believe hair and makeup people will be more connected, even more so than before with their talent. Something's going to be beautiful to born out of this craziness. And I'm optimistic to this period. And ask me 3 weeks ago, I too was in the dark. I too was sad for our industry. But I begin to see the beauty that can come out of this whole thing.
And, something that I wanted to bring up today in the talk, which was, to talk about local designers. And local
Absolutely.
Asian designers. And that's something that, I've been really pushing forth with our Bazaar New Gen Fashion Award. And, we bring together like 3 or 4 countries around Asia, and we promote young Asian talent. And, I would love to see influencers and models, and this is a message to them,
Yes.
support your own. Support your own, love your own. And when I say your own, I mean everyone from Asia, not just your own country.
Right.
And we need to break borders as well. Like there are models or influencers that say, oh, but it's not from my country. I'm not really, but to the world, and that's what they need to understand. To the world, when you post one image, it's not just to your local community,
Absolutely.
it's to the world. And when you support other Asians who need that support, who don't have the funds, who are not part of the LVMH or Carings of the world, you make a bigger statement to those people, to those consumers, and they remember.
And we
When
have
you
more
wear
responsibility than ever. Right now, we
yeah,
are.
when you wear that young designer, that says so much more about you than wearing that couture gown. It really, really does. And at this time and place where everyone's working from home, everyone's stuck at home, do think about your space, and do think about how you can use your power in your space to help someone less fortunate than you. We're so fortunate to be able to be in our homes, to even have this IG live and talk openly and freely. Many people don't have connection. Many people don't have homes that they can call their own. And that's something that this pandemic has really brought true, which is what constitutes home, what constitutes what means to you safety, and it's true when they say safety in numbers. If you think about that wider Asian community, we're billions. we should love our own people, and that is something that I don't think happens enough.
I couldn't agree with you more. And being in a Western culture, I see that more and more so that the Asian community compete with each other. And listen, but there are the incredibly wonderful like Jason Wu, who has been on the show with me and wants to cook together. And because he's just a wonderful human being that happened to be Asian, or Asian happened to be a wonderful human being. Pick one or the other, choose one. As long as you have one part of that, you will be in the right place for your community, because it's hard, because we all want to be the one and only in whatever we do. Like when I got cast on a TV show on CW with Tyra Banks, it was like the article put out there, first Taiwanese making network television. It was a huge news in Taiwan. But if nobody ever said that, I wouldn't even think of that. I would just think, oh, I'm just a talent who got cast with that part, because then you begin to ask the question, did I get that part because I'm Asian? Now do I have responsibility to the first one, and do I make sure I stay there? It's that constant pressure, right? It's a constant pressure going, okay, are there other photographers who are Asian? Are they going to take my job because they're Asian? And it comes with maturity and time to know none of that stuff should bother you. Now, you don't lose job because you're Asian. You, at least I hope in my industry who doesn't do that for me. But I do know one thing: I do get job because I'm Asian. So I'm gonna take that part and run with it. When I get the opportunity to take the Asian card and get in front of the line in a Western culture, you bet you guys I will use it anytime and any day.
You brought up a really interesting point, and actually it just occurred to me while talking to you. When I was asked to be part of the franchise for Asia's Next Top Model at the very, very start, and it was something that I fought against. I was like, no, I'm not very comfortable in front of the TV. It's not something I really want to do. But 5 seasons into Asia's Next Top Model, I realized the power of being able to speak to so many communities, so many young aspiring designers, models, students, to talk to them and to reach out to them and to let them understand the universe that we inhabit. We're in such, as I said, time and again, we're in such privileged positions, and we're very, very thankful and grateful and lucky to be where we are. But to be able to use that platform of Asia's Next Top Model, and yes, it's a reality show, but on the flip side, it's also giving you an eye into fashion as how it's seen with magazines internationally on runways, and how models compete, and how models need to also embrace each other, and that strength in numbers. That's so important. And I remember the producer then was actually asking me like, oh, could you get Yu Tsai for us? And I'm like, oh my God, done. I've worked with Yu Tsai. I've been working with him for a few years. I think he would be so fantastic to bring in. And we did. And it was, you kind of made and gave a different level to Asia's Next Top Model, because you gave it a voice beyond Asia. You brought it
Thank
to
you.
America, and you gave it a voice there, and you gave a voice to Asian Americans who, we in a way, when we're in Asia, we don't see that racism. We don't see that color barrier. But when you're in America, in a predominantly white society, you do see that color barrier. And,
Absolutely.
you broke that down on your platforms, and being on Asia's Next Top Model and talking to girls and bringing that experience to girls, I think was very empowering.
Well, I mean, I have to thank you for that job opportunity. And I know when the
You owe
producer
me.
called me, I was like, and when they asked me, when I say yes, I remember the phone went silent. And I go, hello, are you guys still there? They're like, did you just say yes? I said, yes, because we haven't even discussed the rates. I go, it's a yes. Figure it out, it's a yes. Because they were shocked that somebody who is already on the franchises in the US and was still running at the same time, or was still on air, cycle 20 and 21, 22, and I was already crossing over to the Asian one. And they didn't think that would be possible because they didn't think anybody would leave the main franchise and go. And so they asked me, and I said, I will give you the answer when we film the first episode. So on the first episode, one of the girls asked me why I came back, and I reminded them, I said, because I belong here. This is home. And nowhere would I want to be more than come home to be able to discover and expose models of quality that we have to the rest of the Western world. Why would I not want to do that? I mean, so we have amazing Asian models out there, more so than we give credit for. Yes, there's the Fei Feis and there's the Luins. There are a lot more than that, you guys. There are a lot more than that. And they work well. They work really, really, really powerful in Asia, and because of whatever circumstances, they don't cross over to the U.S. Or the Paris or whatnot. Now, so not so much so back then, but now, even after the Asian Next Top Model has taken a pause, these girls are become hosts. They become powerful influencers. They are inspiring other people to have a voice. And we have models who gain weight that becomes voice to positivity about it's okay to be heavy as an Asian woman. That's the craziest talk ever, but it is okay. It is okay to come from a small village from Myanmar and have big dreams. And that's a beauty of what we get to do in the fashion business, and that is fantasy can come true. And that's really what fashion is to me.
It truly is. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the girls that I worked with on Asia's Next Top Model, and we still talk, and
we photograph them for the magazines. We celebrate them.
We shoot them in the magazine. When they could travel, they were coming through Singapore, and we engaged with them and we talked to them, and it was a very real conversation. And when they went back home, a couple of the winners were from the Philippines. A couple of the winners were from Indonesia. And when they went back home, and they brought that power from a program like Asia's Next Top Model, and they brought it back home and they celebrated it. And I think those are the most successful girls. Absolutely. When they celebrated that power in being able to be inclusive. And, it really was a very unique opportunity of bringing people together. And in a way, that sort of represented what Bazaar was all about. Like, Harper's Bazaar Singapore is bringing Asian communities all together and binding them as one. And then you take it and you go back home and you celebrate that. Absolutely. And you push that forth. Absolutely. And you give that their own power. And that's what I want to do with young designers. And that's why I did New Gen. It's to bring all these Asian talents together, give them an international runway show in Singapore, and then they go back home, they be stars, and they breed the next star, the next community. And that's how it has to keep going. It's the next, it's the next, it's the next. But that's a good next.
Absolutely. Okay, we're running out of time, but one question I do want to
Okay.
ask you before I let you go, and that is, with all this work that you have done, many, many years in the fashion business, and you are editor-in-chief in a prominent, amazing position to make so many influences, what's the ultimate thing that you want people to remember you of?
I think I would love to be remembered for someone who made a difference, however small or big, in their lives, and brought a certain kindness and
I love that.
graciousness,
I love that.
into their lives. And it can be in any small way, whether it's an article, whether it's a post, whether it's a picture, something that made a difference in their lives and I think, family values, wherever that comes from, that's really, really important as well. Just remember that, your family is everything.
Absolutely, especially through this time that we're learning that very, very, very at the very surface of our emotions all the time. Well, thank you, Kenneth, so much. You guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you for Harper's Bazaar, and thank you for the relationship of all these years and covers that we've done together, and many more to come, you guys. And again, you guys have any questions, you're welcome to DM Harper's, you're welcome to DM Kenneth, and DM me. I'll try to get to as much as we can. And thank you for joining us at this special edition of Let's Talk by Harper's Bazaar Singapore with editor-in-chief and friend Kenneth Goh. Until we see each other again next time, keep talking, guys. It helps a lot, I promise you. And smile. And we'll leave with that word we said, Kenneth. Be kind. Be kind to each other. Thanks, everyone.